Ever heard of the worst F1 driver ever? And no, I'm not talking about Mazepin, Yuji-Ide, or Mahavir, though I see you rolling your eyes. How about a driver with a record worse than all of them combined? Oh, and throw in kidnapping, nepotism, cash flying around, media scandals, and crashes galore. Now we're talking. The sweet symphony of roaring V12 engines, the smell of burnt rubber, and adrenaline levels that could power a small country. It's 1992, and the world of Formula One is packed with the sharpest, fastest drivers on the planet. Legends like Ayrton Senna and Nigel Mansell are racing at speeds that make your head spin. And in the middle of all this testosterone-fueled chaos, a woman steps onto the scene, ready to take on the challenge. Her name, Giovanna Amati, a car powered by dreams fueled with cash. And in the driver's seat, a rich girl determined to stand up and move forward. A disastrous season filled with back-of-the-pack finishes and a media circus that turned her into a punchline rather than a pioneer. But was she really that bad, or was the deck stacked against her from the start? Well, I've got my own opinion, but I'll be asking for yours after we finish the story. Welcome to today's video, folks. Buckle up, because we're about to take a wild ride through the story of Giovanna Amati, the last woman to compete in Formula One. Her entry into the 1992 F1 season with the struggling Brabham team should have been groundbreaking. Instead, it became the stuff of ridicule, branding her as possibly the worst F1 driver of her time. But was that really fair? Amati's story is more than just missed opportunities and slow lap times. It's like a tale of ambition, privilege, and breaking barriers in a sport notorious for keeping women on the sidelines. How did she end up in Formula One? What went so wrong? And why, despite her disastrous performance, is Giovanna Amati's legacy still worth talking about over 30 years later? From kidnapping victim to media target, she stepped into a world that was essentially forbidden for women, using her connections to make it happen. Giovanna Amati, a woman who, against all odds, became a Formula One driver. It was dramatically controversial, and yes, painfully short. Giovanna Amati's life was far from ordinary. Born in Rome in 1959 to a wealthy and influential family, her parents, mother was a top actress, and father owned multiple theaters. Their connections undoubtedly opened doors, and it wasn't long before she found herself enamored with motorsport. Giovanna had the kind of childhood that most kids only dream of: money, fame, and all the luxuries you could imagine. But instead of following in her mother's footsteps, young Giovanna had a different dream: racing. While most girls her age were probably busy with piano lessons and schoolwork, Giovanna had other plans. She secretly bought a 500cc motorcycle at 15 and spent years sneaking off to the Vallelunga racetrack, practicing her skills. On the down low, her family thought she was learning to play the piano, but she was already setting her sights on the fast lane. Giovanna's life took a dark turn in 1978. At just 19, she was kidnapped by a group of masked men. For 75 days, she was held captive, enduring unimaginable physical and emotional abuse. The kidnappers, knowing her family was wealthy, demanded a ransom of 800 million lire. Even though her father's assets were frozen at the time, he somehow raised the money. Yet, that didn't spare Giovanna from one of the most harrowing experiences of her life. And her bad luck didn't end there. After she was freed, one of the kidnappers tried to contact her, possibly thinking he could manipulate or groom her. But Giovanna wasn't having any of it. She smartly called the police, setting up a trap that led to his capture. You'd think that would be the end of her nightmare. Right? Wrong. The media took it to a whole new level of victim blaming. They printed stories claiming that she and her kidnapper were lovers, and that the entire thing had her consent. Can you believe that? The audacity. It's like, sure, she went through a hellish ordeal, but let's just throw some more gasoline on the fire. Absolutely absurd. This traumatic event didn't stop her from pursuing her dream, though. If anything, it made her even more determined to make it in motorsport. But here's where the story takes a twist. You see, while most racers hone their skills through years of karting, Formula 3, and then maybe, if they're good enough, they get a shot at Formula 1, Giovanna took a, shall we say, unconventional route. After recovering from her kidnapping, Giovanna began her motorsport career in 1981, racing in Formula Abarth. While most drivers build up gradually, she spent 4 years there with only a few wins to show, making it clear she wasn't destined for greatness. In 1985, she moved up to Italian Formula 3, but again, her performance was mediocre. What set her apart wasn't skill, it was her family's wealth and connections, which opened doors for her. By 1987, she somehow made it to International Formula 3000, the stepping stone to F1, but after 4 years and 31 races, she didn't score a single point. Her most notorious moment came in 1990 during a Formula 3000 race when she caused a massive crash by swerving into fellow driver Phil Andrews. Though Andrews survived, her erratic driving became the main headline, yet this wasn't the end of her racing career. In 1991, despite her terrible track record, Giovanna somehow landed a test drive with Benetton, a team that would later propel Michael Schumacher's career. She completed 30 laps, but the real surprise came when Brabham signed her for the 1992 Formula One season. The 1992 Formula One season was a monster. With drivers like Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, and Nigel Mansell, the competition was nothing short of brutal. Mansell's Williams car was miles ahead in terms of technology. How does someone with 0 points in Formula 3000 and a knack for crashing end up in F1? Simple. Connections and luck. Brabham was financially struggling and needed a driver who could bring in sponsorship money. Giovanna's wealthy family made her an appealing choice. Initially, they wanted Japanese driver Akihiko Nakaya, but he couldn't get a super license, so Giovanna got the spot by default. Let's break down what it means to race in F1. Every driver goes through practice, qualifying, and then the race itself. But for teams like Brabham, they first had to survive pre-qualifying. That's right, before even getting a chance to qualify for the race, they had to make it through this elimination round. The odds weren't just stacked against Amati, they were practically crushing her. Giovanna became the first woman in 15 years to race in F1, but her stint was disastrous. She failed to qualify for her first race by a whopping 8 seconds, an eternity in F1. The next 2 races in Mexico and Brazil went the same way. 3 races, 3 failures to qualify. Brabham quickly replaced her with Damon Hill, who later became the 1996 F1 World Champion. Amati's time in Formula One was rough, to say the least. In her debut race at the 1992 South African Grand Prix, she struggled during practice and pre-qualifying, finishing last in qualifying and failing to make the starting grid. Unfortunately, this wasn't a one-time thing. Over the next 2 races, she kept missing the cut, consistently posting the slowest times. The media quickly questioned whether she earned her F1 seat through skill or just family connections, with many leaning toward the latter. To be fair, the Brabham car she was driving was a mess, slow, outdated, and hard to handle. But even with the poor equipment, Amati's lack of experience and skill at this level became all too clear. After failing to pre-qualify for 3 consecutive races, Brabham had had enough. The team, under immense pressure to perform, made the tough call to replace Amati. And who did they bring in? None other than Damon Hill, son of legendary driver Graham Hill. Despite being a rookie himself, Damon Hill immediately outperformed Amati, qualifying for races and proving that it wasn't just the car holding her back. Her stint in F1 was over as quickly as it had begun: 3 races, 0 starts, and a whole lot of controversy. After her Formula One career crashed, Giovanna Amati didn't completely disappear from motorsports. She continued racing in lower-tier competitions, but her F1 failure cast a long shadow. Her story sparked a broader conversation about women in motorsport, as she remains the last woman to compete in Formula One, with no female drivers since. This raised questions about gender in the sport. Out of hundreds of F1 drivers, only 5 have been women, a shockingly low number. While Amati didn't excel in F1, is it fair to blame her for the lack of female representation? She drove an uncompetitive car under immense pressure, and the Micadia's relentless focus on her gender amplified every mistake, turning her into a spectacle rather than just another driver. So, here's the big question. Was Giovanna Amati the worst F1 driver of 1992? Statistically speaking, was she the worst driver this racetrack has ever seen? Yes, and also no. Was her pushing every door with money and connection unethical and annoying? Yes, but her effort and dream were genuine. She was certainly at the bottom of the pack. But should her legacy be defined solely by her lack of results on the track? Maybe not. Amati's career might have been a disaster, but it also highlighted the immense challenges that women face in motorsport. She opened the door for conversations about gender equality in racing conversations that, in many ways, are still ongoing today. While she wasn't the hero F1 needed at the time, she wasn't the villain either. So, is Giovanna Amati's title as the worst F1 driver fair? It's easy to look at the results and say yes, but the truth is a lot more complicated. Amati faced an uphill battle from the start, an uncompetitive car, a team in turmoil, and a media landscape that was far more interested in her gender than her driving ability. She might not have been a Formula One champion, but her story is an important one in the history of motorsport. If nothing else, Amati's brief stint in F1 serves as a reminder that motorsport isn't just about talent, it's about opportunity, timing, and sometimes sheer luck. Giovanna Amati didn't get her fairy tale ending, but her place in F1 history is set in stone as the last woman to take the wheel. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see another woman driver come along and finish the race she started. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the most fascinating and controversial stories in motorsport history. See you next time.